Hi, don't mind me. I'm just fixing my weave. Doesn't it look so natural? Yes. All right, I'm your golden gal. So why are certain leaders trying to link climate change and terrorism? Let's find out from this beautiful early week party panel. It's Katherine Timpf from the Greg Gutfeld Show. She's a correspondent and a National Review reporter and Star Wars hater. But don't hate her for that. Kmele Foster, he's a partner at Free Think Media. And look at how blossomy he is. He's just grown into quite a man. Guy Benson is here from townhall.com, the political editor, also a Fox News contributor. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Kmele.
Howdy. It's
Kmele's first time. We should smother him with...
No, be gentle. Be gentle.
We should be gentle with him, like a tiny puppy.
Yes, like a baby.
And a mohair sweater. Okay, so, Guy, I will start with you. Were you surprised how quickly President Hollande bought into this propaganda about climate change and terrorism?
No, because this is the line on the left right now. And here in America, you'll see lefties like Bernie Sanders and his apologists pointing to various studies, including one from the Pentagon, that purport to link terrorism and climate change and global warming. And the way that the story goes is when there are fewer resources and more droughts and those types of disasters, it makes it harder. It puts new pressures on governments to provide for basic human needs of populations, and therefore people get angry and embittered and turn to extremism, hence the link. The problem with that, though, is what about homegrown radicals in Europe, where they're not from Syria, grown up in comfort with all the trappings of Western society, and they have traveled to Syria to fight on behalf of this ideology. It is mind-bendingly idiotic that we have the political class on one side of the spectrum that seems to actually believe that this is sensible analysis.
Well, and if you take those two elements away from each other, if you take climate change out, there's still going to be terrorism.
Yeah,
and if you take terrorism out, climate change isn't necessarily going to lead to that kind of behavior. Isn't it what propaganda got us here in the first place, Kmele?
I'd say that's right. I mean, there's certainly not a correlation between these two things. Any connection there is ephemeral at best. But what we can say is at least similar between climate change and conversations about terrorism in general is that there is a great deal of hyperbole and exaggeration that supports interventionists, I believe, in my own opinion, on both issues. Interventionists on climate change rely on hyperbole in order to explain why they need to get involved in the economy. And I think people who exaggerate the risks related to terrorism advocate for all sorts of foreign policy interventions along the same lines with largely the same sort of evidence that can't really be substantiated.
You are absolutely right. That is so well said, and that is such an important point, because it is this idea of interventionism and essentially creating problems and creating catastrophes that you can then, through propaganda, sell to the public, so they say, oh, government, can we please rely on you, for we are helpless sheep? And that's absolutely right. It's happening in both ways from both sides, and it's incredibly dangerous. Is climate change deadlier than terrorism?
This is so dumb. I can hardly stand to hear you two very intelligent people actually give very intelligent arguments against something that's so incredibly stupid. I think it's just a lot easier to say climate change, yeah, we need to help the environment to stop climate change, is much easier than a complicated problem and an involved problem like what's going on in the Middle East, which, let's be honest, none of us really know. None of us really know what's there. It's very complicated. Pollution, bad for the earth. Stop pollution, much easier.
Yeah, no, that is easier, and
sounds easier to talk about at least.
But if somehow you can repackage the whole thing and sell the 2-for-1 deal, like when you go to the movies and they give you the large soda with the giant popcorn. And you know what? They both bloat the state, and that is untenable and against liberty. Friday, a gunman killed 2 people in a Colorado Planned Parenthood clinic. Since then, executives have been quick to politicize the tragedy. It was actually 3 people. Vicky Coher, president and CEO of Planned Parenthood Rocky Mountain, said this.
Such a negative environment has been created around the work that Planned Parenthood does. I can't believe that this isn't contributing to some folks, mentally unwell or not, thinking that it's okay to target Planned Parenthood.
This is offensive on so many levels. So, you know, she talked a little bit about the toxic environment created by these negative videos, but takes no responsibility for possibly the toxic environment that Planned Parenthood might have created in having the videos necessary in the first place.
Right. The appalling butchery of Planned Parenthood and their entire business model is not a justification of the violence that we saw in Colorado. Everyone that I know who is pro-life, including myself, unequivocally denounces what this psycho did. What is driving me crazy, and it seems like we talk about this every time I'm on the show because it is a pattern in our society, in our politics. It comes back to the thesis of our book, End of Discussion, how one side in particular tries to exploit tragedy and tries to take arguments and say, aha, rhetoric is responsible, ideology is responsible for the ravings or actions of a madman in an effort to silence a debate and tar people with whom they disagree. And that's what we've seen not just from Planned Parenthood executives, but the governor of Colorado, the Washington Post editorial board, I mean, the New York Times, of course. The list goes on where they're saying, aha, here's one guy who may have been an anti-abortion zealot extremist who resorted to violence. Let's use this opportunity to slime an entire half of the country, and it is revolting, and we have to reject it.
But there's almost this glee once again for politicians to come out and talk about gun control.
Sure.
You know, which is really, of the offensive things that happened in this case, that's pretty low down on the list.
I'd say that's right. I mean, this is the same category of error as the previous story. It's oversimplification.
Yeah.
The simple narrative is the one that wins. We can talk about gun control very easily and simply. If there are no guns, there'll be no crime. Let's not deal with the fact that there are millions of guns, and you simply cannot make them all disappear. I'd say that that's about the same when you ascribe all of these specific intentions to what is obviously a crazy person.
Yeah.
And crazy people of all political stripes have carried out various heinous actions, and that's not an indictment of the beliefs that they may share in common with other normal, sane people.
No, if there's a tiny bit of real estate that they share in common, you can't paint everyone with a broad brush. And I hope people don't give in to that political convenience, because it is so dangerous. So what do you blame for this? I mean, do you blame rhetoric for violence?
Anytime anyone blames any kind of violence like this on rhetoric, whether it's this, whether it's a terrorist attack, saying the GOP is being too tough on Muslims, it's just there's no way that a normal person can be turned into this kind of madman through somebody's rhetoric. There's a pre-existing condition of you being evil and or like cuckoo bananas, totally crazy.
Yeah.
No normal, well-adjusted person is here, oh, you know, I was normal, and then I heard Carly Fiorina talk for 5 minutes, and then I wanted to shoot up a bunch of people. That's really what they're saying when you boil it down to that, and that is insane. There's absolutely no way that's the way that the world works. No normal person is affected that way by anything, and if you were, then it was going to be something else.
And Planned Parenthood has even made the admission, you know, we're going to stop trading or selling these body parts. Well, then, you know, that's an admission they were doing this in the first place.
Right. Not cool.
You know, and if the video hadn't caught them doing that, they would just, what, go along and silence trading in parts of the unborn?
Well, but this is the opportunity for them to pivot from, oh, look at what we've been doing, technically legally, or in some cases illegally, and let's instead go over here and not let a crisis go to waste and try to blame all of this on our critics and make them the issue and their free speech and their good faith beliefs the issue rather than the man who is responsible for this and the conduct at Planned Parenthood.
And that's another really good point that we have to bring up. Unfortunately, we have to go right now. But the free speech element, you know, if only we quiet people who stand on the opposite side of our flimsily held beliefs, if only we could squash that discussion and maybe have an end of discussion guy, co-author of a fantastic book on free speech. Much more with the panel coming up.
Get a piece of anytime I want. I got Carol in the bedroom right now, passed out cold. I could violate her 10 different ways if I wanted to.
What are you waiting for?
Just a pink Trans Am and the guy, right? A black one. A black guy? A black Trans Am, a pink guy.
So racist. That is a clip from 16 Candles, a 1984 blockbuster that some people now say is racist and sexist. New York Post writer Sarah Stewart. Normally, I love the New York Post, but Sarah Stewart is out of her gourd. She said, "It's with a heavy heart that I wonder whether we should retire 16 Candles, since it seems to celebrate both racism and date rape." My panelists back, it's Kat Timpf, Kmele Foster, and Guy Benson. Kmele, you've always said that 16 Candles isn't racist enough. What do you mean by that?
That is true. That is true. More N-bombs, since I'd be censored anyways. Look, what we can take away from this, from all sorts of phony racial outrage like this, is that we have made so much progress. There is so little left to be done that we have to crusade against films that no one is watching right now.
Yeah.
The only way I would see 16 Candles is if I picked up a DVD, it was in the box but not labeled, and I put it in by accident, and then it said, oh, 16 Candles. That's the only way I'd see it.
Yeah.
This is not a problem.
See,
we don't have to be concerned about this.
16 Candles.
And it's not racist.
I came of age in junior high and high school during the John Hughes era. So this is it's part of the canon. It's very important to me with Ferris Bueller's Day Off and Breakfast Club. I mean, it's, Pretty in Pink. These are, great films because they sort of poke fun and
Pretty in Pink.
You wouldn't, Guy, men wear pink.
Because I wanted you to ask me to prom, Guy. You didn't get my overt suggestions. Now, I know you haven't seen 16 Candles, but there are so many examples of this type of thing. And one of her coworkers said that we need to get rid of Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, we should just ban everything.
Yes.
And especially problematic to me are the words sexism and racism themselves, because they call to mind things that trigger me personally. And so I think
I should have issued a formal trigger warning before I started the segment.
You should have.
Absolutely right.
Shame on you. I'm microaggressed, and this studio, well, this studio is never a safe space for me. It's nonsense.
Oh, the things that go on here in dark corners when the cameras aren't around.
Yeah, or sometimes when the cameras are on. But anyway, look at this is totally spun out of control.
Yeah.
We're so desperate to find outrages that we're going back and trying to ban pop culture of decades past.
Yeah.
Just get a life. Get a life. This is pathetic.
Yeah, no, but you guys are absolutely right. Yay, it's all good. We've solved everything. Go back to school at Princeton and Mizzou and Dartmouth. Everything is fine. What movie best typifies your high school experience, Kat?
Not even a 3-minute film could be made about my high school experience. It was so boring. I did homework. I had a little, it was like a mullet, but also kind of a Beatles haircut. And I used to sit in the back row writing dashboard confessional lyrics on my notebook, be like, why doesn't he like me back? And I was bullied, so now I know why. Bullying can be very helpful. I might still be doing those things. That's what I always say. Bullying is a little underrated.
Always defended bullying.
Always, people made fun of me, including my mother, and now I'm not doing that anymore.
One man's bullying is another man's constructive criticism.
Constructive criticism.
Absolutely.
Constructive criticism is always the way to go. If you see a kid doing that, tell them they're being a loser.
We have gone softer than Cool Whip. That is what they are saying. And speaking of Cool Whip, it is delicious. You know who eats a lot of it? Michael Moore. He has launched a website and a Twitter campaign with the hashtag #MyHomeIsOpen, encouraging Americans to open their homes to Syrian and Iraqi refugees. He has criticized the many governors who have publicly stated they will refuse refugees into their states, calling their actions both disgraceful and unconstitutional. Now, Kmele, while I don't disagree with Michael Moore on this, and it's obviously not up to the governors to decide how the federal government allows refugees into this country, would you open up your spacious New York City apartment to a nice Syrian family?
I don't even like to have family come over and stay more than a few hours, so the notion of bringing folks from overseas to stay with me for a long period of time is a little hard. Not sure I'm going to do that, but kudos to him. Honestly, these folks have been through enormously difficult situations. It is really unfortunate that they have become part of this this political gamesmanship that is taking place in this country. Because we should be honest here, there have been lots of Syrian refugees who have come to this country since 9/11. Exactly how many of them have been involved in?
And Iraqi refugees and Burmese refugees. I mean, isn't the bigger worry that Michael Moore takes these people into his home and meets them?
Yeah, that is definitely a danger. He gives them the little tiny apartment. He clearly has no other resources that he could offer these people except his little tiny Michigan
what about
apartment.
his giant lakefront mansion?
Where he just sits there. I mean, he can't have people over. Who goes there? Who's hanging out with Michael Moore? I'm serious. Anyone out there, feel free to prove me wrong. But no one's gonna, because no one's hanging out with him.
If I was invited, I would hang out with Michael.
Yeah, only because you could say you did and make fun of him.
So why is the right conveniently squeamish now about Syrian refugees? Is it just because of Paris?
I think that's a big reason, because there were 3 people who or at least have been alleged, were posing as refugees who entered Europe, who were connected to the plot in some way. And I think that there is a significant sense of mistrust, not necessarily of Syrians and all the refugees, because we're a loving, welcoming country that wants to help people who need help. I think there is a distrust of the competence of the government to get it right. There have been refugees from the Iraqi refugee program, which was paused, by the way, for 6 months in 2011, who did try to carry out a terrorist attack in Kentucky. So I think, given what happened in Paris, given the multitude of examples of incompetence and corruption in the federal government, there are a lot of people, governors and citizens, saying, we don't trust the feds to get this right and keep us safe. And it's President Obama's job to convince us that the process is sound, and he is doing such a terrible job of it. I don't blame people for being skeptical.
5 seconds, Kmele.
I do hope that people will extend some of that skepticism to a lot of the foreign policy interventions that have been being advocated for by Republican presidential candidates right now. I'm super skeptical of them.
Interventionism.
I'm skeptical of everything, including skepticism. Thank you so much, panel. This was refreshing. Kmele, it's so nice to have you here. All right, coming up, Judge Napolitano on deck. The NSA data collection program apparently ending. What it means for national security, fighting terrorism, and most importantly, your liberty. That's next.